Welcome to another episode of 3 Men in a War Game. I am your host, Kevin, aka Chop, aka Cardboard Crack Addict, aka Plastic Addict, and I am joined with by my other two co-hosts.
I'm Paul, and I don't have any cool AKAs, but I do have a plastic crack addiction, not the cardboard one, but a plastic one. And a thin one, apparently.
And I'm Potter, and what these guys don't know is that this is an intervention.
Oh, shit.
All right, well, we won't... it's funny because we're not going to be talking about luxury cardboard rectangles or miniatures tonight.
No. I mean, this does involve cardboard rectangles, but not quite at the premium of...
Yeah, not luxury cardboard rectangles. These are just regular cardboard rectangles.
These are cardboard rectangles that I know nothing about.
That said, we should talk about some hobby progress because it's actually been quite a while since we chatted on the mic. I'll go first this time because I almost never do. And because it's like... I feel like I've stopped and started a bunch of like miniature related projects this year, and by started I mean like barely took something out of a box and started to build something and been like, nah.
I feel you on that.
But and you guys can confirm, I am like 95% painted on a Warhammer Underworlds warband. I bought it. I pulled it out of the box, I built it, and I painted the whole goddamn thing.
So there's two things there, Kevin. Not only are you completing a progress, but it's Underworlds?
Look. Look
here, man.
So the first part is it's October, and I wanted to paint something spooky, and I think you guys will both agree that the miniatures that I painted and the paint scheme that I've chosen for them are appropriately spoopy.
Yes, I would say that is correct.
For sure.
Also, there is a new, what they refer to as season of Warhammer Underworlds starting very shortly. I think the new box comes out in the first week of November. And we'll actually probably record an episode about it because I'm, as I do, I get pretty into a thing when I get into it. And so I've done a lot of research as to where this game is on the recommendation of a local friend named Skylar, who I've played some board games with. I played some Flesh and Blood with. And is a generally stand-up dude whose main game is Warhammer Underworlds. And he's actually on a podcast called What the Hex about the game.
I like it.
I approve of the pun anyway.
Yep. And so they do What the Hex, and What the Hex is very excited. You'll be good to know also they're pretty punny in everything. Like the new set is called Death Gorge, and their release for their review for the set is called Death Gorgeous.
Oh my gosh.
It was appropriately dad punned.
Yep. So anyway, Skylar was telling me about how the game has changed a lot since the last time that I played it, and it got me interested enough to try it. And basically what he said is they've also been doing things with the design space that they, it sort of didn't seem like they may have ever been willing to do back when the game started. And I think it'll actually be worth diving back in once I've actually played some games. If I'm going to get into it, we could just do a whole episode on it. So I don't want to speak at length about Warhammer Underworlds right now, but suffice to say, I did paint an entire warband, the Headsman something. It's the Night Haunt warband with like a giant dude with a huge broadsword and then a couple other Night Haunts. It's a very, very cool warband, and I took a John Blanche sort of color palette to Ghosts, and I feel really good about it.
I'll tell you what, the guy who's like telling his kid that he's getting nothing for Christmas is probably my favorite guy.
I love that guy, dude. So every time I look at that model, it reminds me of that intro from Aqua Teen Hunger Force when Dr. Weird turns Steve into a pork chop, and he's like, Steve, get over here and pay your half of the utilities. Like he's like pointing at the utilities. I don't know why it reminds me of that every time I look at him, but that's what I feel like he's saying.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Anyway.
Love it.
But hobby progress for you guys.
I believe I'm at nothing.
I think you've been spending a lot of time on tonight's subject.
Yeah. Well, yes, I cleaned up a lot of hobby stuff to make room to set up, and even, I've not been playing that as much as I would like, but I've definitely been having a good time with it. But has there? I don't know. I'm partway through my couple of my conquest projects. I guess since the last time we talked, I built the big giant Brontosaurus.
What? You haven't sent pictures of it.
Well, I didn't finish. Did I not send you like the part way? Really?
No. Well, I mean, you said like part of the building, but so you haven't finished it.
No, I mean the dinosaur itself is built.
Yeah, I don't think you've sent that.
Oh, really?
I don't know. I don't remember it.
All right, well, that might be happening in just a second. But yeah, I think that's really all I did. I'm painting it in pieces, so I haven't really delved into it yet. I want to kind of finish the other stuff that I have. But I have a really cool paint scheme picked out for it, continuing with my theme of dinosaurs are birds. And I'm really excited to get that one going because it's probably my favorite bird. So
Hell
yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Let's go.
And that's it. That's it for me.
That's it for you. Well, I have done very little hobbying. I've actually been reading a lot.
Nerd.
Yeah, I know. In preparation for the Disney Plus Percy Jackson show that's coming out, I read Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, so my daughter and I could critique the show as we watched it. And then I started Eye of the World. Paul hates me because I've started Eye of the World, apparently.
I mean, there's just other things to read.
Yeah, well. And then there's this asshole that bought me a 100 Kingdoms model that I am currently painting as I'm talking right now.
Hell yeah. Also, you can just...
That guy's a jerk.
As a person who hasn't read any of the Wheel of Time books, but enjoyed the TV show, can confirm skip it.
So the cool thing is I'm actually really enjoying looking at the parallels because I finished season 2. Yep. I quite enjoyed season 2.
Me too.
I quite enjoyed season 1, and it's been really kind of fun to kind of look at like, well, I think the book did it better here. I think the show did it better here. So it's been really kind of fun kind of going back and analyzing it after seeing the show and then now reading the books.
It's interesting that you don't have the like, man, the book, because you didn't read it first. That's kind of an interesting way to do it. But I haven't read the books and I have no intention to because I've been enjoying the show and I have no intention for the books to ruin it for me. So.
Yeah, I think I'm going to purposely stay behind on the books as the show comes out so I can critique it. Yeah.
Hell yeah. That's the way to go.
Now, I mean, like when Sanderson stuff starts getting adapted, I'll go like, the books.
Yeah, I know that, and I feel like you should, right? But I'm just saying, like, as a person who hasn't read all 95,000 pages of the Wheel of Time, like, I definitely enjoy the show quite a bit.
From the
perspective of a complete and utter know nothing about the books.
As somebody who has read the books, just watch the show.
All right, fair enough.
Just watch the show. Yeah,
cool.
I mean, don't get me wrong. The first 3 books are really good. The first 3 are really good. If it was a trilogy, it would be perfect.
All right,
but yeah. There's it starts being a wagon stuck in snow at some point. So
it be dragging.
Oh yeah.
All right, fair enough. Well, let's get into the main topic here.
Hooray!
And so the main topic is it's a board game.
What?
I know.
It's taken us this how long to critique a board game?
I mean, it's the name of the show is 3 Men in a War Game, so I was reluctant to even do it this time.
I mean, as many times as we've talked about card games, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know. But like the card game we talked about, it just happens to be like, I've played a lot of it. I've played over 200 games of it this year. So like, I think it was appropriate to acknowledge that and talk about it on the show. But I also have been playing a lot of this game. And Paul and I both deeply, deeply love the game that we're going to talk about right now, which is Final Girl.
Yes. Final Girl. So good. So good.
I think we've talked shortly about when it was first coming out
I mean, I'm sure I've mentioned it quite a bit actually.
Yeah.
Like if someone was to go back and like tell the tale of the tape, I'm sure I've mentioned it a few times on the show. But it's not just a board game; it's a solo board game. So you're talking about a nerd for reading books and shit. Holy balls! Talking about playing a board game by yourself. It's
nerds.
Yeah, peak nerd. But this game, whew, it's a really, really good one.
Can before we get into this, since this is, a single player game,
yeah.
Do you know how long it took for me to break the habit of saying out loud everything that I'm intending to do?
That is so I don't do that, but having known you for the better part of 2 decades, I have no problem believing that was an issue.
Like sitting there set up with it like on the couch, and I'd be like,
yeah,
I'm gonna go into this room and I'm rolling 3 die, and my wife would look over at me and be like, I'm watching TV, please stop.
Just shut the hell up.
The thing is, though, I'm sure you're really good at the process of the game. Like, you're not going to make the kinds of like clerical mistakes of someone who's just zipping through if you're announcing out loud that you're doing it. And the cool thing is that the game is actually pretty suited for cooperative play, because a lot of cooperative games just end up being the group collectively solving a puzzle anyway. Mm-hmm. And so you can definitely play this game with another person. I don't know how it would be in a group, but certainly you and your partner could play this game together and enjoy it. And I know people do that. Like, that's a thing people do, is play together with their partner. So
anyway, let's get into the game, so this way we can kind of see how that functions.
Yep. And the last little bit of preamble too, just to mention. I mean, we've mentioned it was a solo game, but the reason we're covering it too, right, is that we both have played a lot of it, and it does do some things that are very unique and some things that will appeal to a wargamer. One of those things being rolling big chunky dice a lot.
Yes,
but there is definitely there is definitely some stuff that I think will translate to wargamers that wargamers would enjoy about this game. So I just wanted to also cover that as a little bit of preamble, and to cover the game like we cover most games. First, we will cover the basics. So solo board game, a session can go anywhere from 20 to 60 minutes, and I think of the book says or the back of the manual says 20 to 40, but I would actually amend it to like 10 to 60 minutes, because boy, sometimes this game goes real fucking sideways.
oh my god, yes, I have stories for when we get there. Stories for when we get there.
All right, yeah. And so 10 to 60 minutes, I think, is what you can expect for a session of this game. Mm-hmm. Setup time is pretty quick, pretty breezy. And the core concept of the game, if you've never heard the expression final girl, it is a trope from horror movies referring to the final person alive, which is typically a girl in horror movies, specifically slasher films. And I think if you stretch your mind for even a moment, you can come up with lots of final girls. The most prominent and my favorite would be Ellen Ripley from Alien, right? But there are, exactly, from Scream. There are many, many, many examples. And so that's what this game is about. You are occupying the role of the final girl, and you are trying to usually kill the killer. There's like one instance where that is not true. I don't think we'll get into any specifics, because I don't want to spoil anything about the game specifically. But generally, you are the final girl. You are trying to rescue victims. You are trying to kill the killer.
Right, and it's like movie wise, you're kind of past all of the build up, and this is just where things are going to hell.
I mean, a little bit. There's definitely a little bit of the build up, right? Because you're like starting in some. It depends on the scenario you're playing, but some of the times you're spending like the first quarter of the game or so evading the killer and trying to rescue people and get them the fuck out of the place.
That's fair.
So this is a card driven game, and it's also it's a little more complicated, isn't it? It's a card-based action selection game. that uses dice to drive the success of your actions. And we'll get into the specifics of that.
I mean, if we're going for everything, could we also slightly call it deck building, or at least hand building?
So hand building, sure, yeah. It's there's definitely some hand building, or we would call it hand shaping in TCGs. There's certainly some hand shaping, and you're each. Well, we'll talk about it, right? But you're basically using the cards to dictate what you're going to do, and then dice decide how well or not well you do at the thing you decide to do.
Sometimes comedically.
I mean, some of the stuff that you guys have shared on your dice rolls, I'm like, I don't know what the hell they're talking about, but
shit's rough, and you'll understand it by the end of this. You'll understand it by the end of this, because we're gonna get into the nitty gritty of how the game works. And why it's so good. Also, it's worth noting that this game is ridiculously modular. It's very modular, and it is also like, now that we're going to have 15 feature films, there's 10 released now. Kickstarter just finished. There's going to be 15 feature films, and then 3 vignettes, which are sort of smaller feature films. Basically, it the ability to like combined the components of this game is massive. Like you could replay this game forever. I think the replayability is near infinite, because even in a single box with one killer and one location that are matched together, the games are wildly different from rack to rack. Like if you re-rack a scenario, even if you're not taking out the cards you saw in the last scenario, it still is very different every time you play it.
See, when I play, I normally don't take out the cards that I've already played, unless it's something where it's like, all right, this is the third time in a row that this has come up.
Yeah, that's when I do it. If it's the second or third time, or if I'm playing like multiple scenarios and I get the epic finale, I'll just take that out for the next one, so that there's no chance I get the epic finale on my next try. Because like, if you flip the epic finale, you're generally fucking dead. And it's just like, how bad are you gonna die?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Chops, even at that, to give you an idea, I mean, I played when I got the core set and the Camp Happy Trails film. I mean, over 2 days, I played 9 games, and none of them were anywhere near remotely the same thing.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
Is Camp Happy Trails, is that Jason?
Yes. Yep, 100%. And Hans, well, it's kind of like, so basically a lot of these films are combinations of 2 movies. And I think Camp Happy Trails is actually a combination of Friday the 13th and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yep. The location is definitely like Camp Crystal Lake, right? Or Sleepaway Camp. It's definitely like, and I'm just trying to give you my horror movie chops here, so I'm just going to like spit off movies. But the killer Hans is like a combination of Leatherface and Jason. It's not really one or the other.
Well, I mean, a lot of them are all those old classic serial killers are pretty much based off the same guy, anyways. So
there's a lot of analog between them. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's good. I mean, that's the perfect combination description of them.
Yeah, and every movie is different, right? Some of the movies are very much one movie. The location and the thing are like, well, okay, we'll talk The Thing, right? The organism in the Thing analog. I mean, you're in an Antarctic base fighting a body snatching alien. It is like The Thing. It's
you
up.
You open up the box on that killer side, and there's a fucking Siberian husky staring at you.
Yeah, it's 100% The Thing. They're not even pretending with it. And again, I don't want to spoil specifics, or else we would instantly talk about the alien, because holy shit, it's so good, the scenario with the alien. Anyway, let's actually talk about the game, right? Rather than just like sort of nerd out about it.
Being excited about it.
I know. So I actually, and it's funny, I had a hard time deciding if we should talk about the details of the game or the core loop first, because knowing the details of the contents of the game help you understand the core loop. But I think everyone who explains the game that I watch, everyone that reviews it, they talk about the contents of the stuff before they talk about the loop. And I feel like you get more out of understanding the contents once you know what the loop is like. So just bear with us here, listeners, while we talk about the loop of the game, because we'll give you the context that you need while we talk about the core loop. And then we'll talk about the details of what you get inside of a box, because I personally think it'll be better this way, because you'll be able to synthesize the information of the components better once you understand how the game works.
Yeah, I think you're onto something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and I think as me knowing nothing, I should hopefully be able to provide that parallel.
The feedback to us instantly. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So a turn in Final Girl happens over 5 phases. Anybody who plays a lot of board games, they're intimately familiar with. I mean, even war games, we know phases, right?
Yep.
We're zen with phases. And so how the game starts is it starts in your action phase. Every turn starts in your action phase. So when you start a game of Final Girl, you have a hand of what are called your basic actions. These consist of walking and focusing and weak attacking and just generally doing like mediocre actions. And we'll get to how you acquire other cards in just a second. But what you need to know here is that each card that you have in your hand represents an action that you can do. So focus, as an example, will decrease the horror level. And as horror increases in this game, you roll less dice. So you want to keep your horror managed so that you can roll more dice, because rolling more dice is a better chance to succeed on your rolls. So this is one of the resources you have to manage in this game is horror. And so focus, as an example, is a card you could play to attempt to reduce the horror in the scenario.
And you need that's it's so interesting how much you do have to manage that. I mean, it depends on scenario. You can manage it somewhat, and then other ones, if you don't manage it, you're done.
It depends on the scenario, right? And like some scenarios, your starting horror is higher or lower, depending on sort of like what the killer does and how the killer affects horror. It changes where the horror starts for the scenario. But now we'll talk about what it is to play an action card. So as an example, let's talk about walk, just as an example. And I feel really, really stupid for not actually pulling the core box out, so I would have the walk card in front of me, but I think I can basically do this from memory. So how this works is you play a card into your card area, and then you roll a number of dice that is on par with your current horror level. And the horror level it's a gradient that will show you're going to roll anywhere from 1 to 3 dice. And so you're going to roll the number of dice that is appropriate to the horror level, at what the horror level dictates you should be rolling. So as an example, you're going to roll 2d6s. Now, the dice have, basically, it's a 6-sided dice with 3 different faces. The 1 and the 2 are strict failures. There's nothing on the dice. The 3 and the 4 are partial successes. And so on partial successes, you can discard 2 cards from your hand to turn it into a success. Yes. So you can discard 2 of the cards you have in your hand, and then it turns a partial success into a success. And a 5 and a 6 are successes. They're stars on the dice. So the 3 and the 4 have the 3 and the 4 written, and then they have an icon that looks like 2 cards. 1 and 2 are just blank, and then 5 and 6 have a star on them, stars being successes. So when you take the walk action, when you roll your dice, there are a few options. If you roll 2 successes, you can move 2 spaces. If you roll 1 success, you can move 1 space. If you roll no successes, you've got an option. And I should also note, you also lose time when you walk, because time is another resource. You have to manage time, and you have to manage horror.
Wait, so
and your health.
With time, do you act like you've got a play clock going on while you're doing this?
So there's there's a meter, and every turn you start on 6 time. So you reset your time to 6, and the walk action, as an example, uses 1 time.
Gotcha.
Right. So you have to manage it, because if you run out, then you run out of time. Like, that's it. Your turn's done. Your turn's done, and it's actually worse than that. Well, yes, but at least as far as where we've gotten.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. So you roll your dice, and if you roll no successes, you can either stand in place and lose a time, or you can move a space, lose a health, and lose 2 time because you fucking tripped.
Yep. Yep.
And this is an example of how the game works. So the game, even in failure, gives you choices. They're not always good. They're generally not good when you fail. But I should note that, but that's the action phase, right? You have a hand of cards and you have a maximum of 10 that you can hold. And you are playing cards and using the time as efficiently as you need to for that turn. And sometimes I'll say there's an action you can take where you can discard a card to increase time. And I will say there have been turns of this game where it was strategically correct for me to twiddle my thumbs, discard 3 cards down to 9 time, and then end my turn immediately. And we'll go into why that's important right now. Because after you've ended your action phase, you go into your planning phase. And in your planning phase, you purchase action cards that you're going to use in the next round. So the cards, this is an important part of this game. The cards that you play in this current round are not available for you to purchase going into the next round. They will not be available for purchase until the next turn. So you can only purchase cards that haven't been played this turn. And there is a tableau of cards you can buy. The basic actions cost nothing. So if you have basic actions that have been recycled into your tableau to purchase, you can purchase all of those for no time. However, all of the good actions in the game cost time. So as an example, 3 of the most common cards you will purchase are Guard, Search, and Sprint. Yep. And so Guard is a card you can use to reduce damage being done to you by the killer. Sprint moves faster than Walk, and Search allows you to search rooms for helpful items. And so those each cost 2 time. So if you're paying attention, your planning phase, you go up to 6, you play cards, those use time, and you're spending cards, you're spending your resources to use time. And then you have to use the time you have remaining to purchase cards for the next round.
Yeah, lots of choices you need to make along the way.
There is a cavernous amount of player agency in this game, but there's also that the player agency is also met with extreme unfairness, which we'll get into
as most horror movies are. So.
Oh yeah, this game. I'll say this right off the bat: if you're not interested in a game that is deeply unfair, we probably buried the lead, and you can stop listening. Well, because this game it is truly unfair. Like if you only care about winning, this is not a game for you.
No, see, and this is one of the things that I wanted to say about the game, and I think this is the perfect time to share it, is that this game's about narrative.
Definitely.
Right?
First and foremost, this is a narrative game.
There have been times whether it's been going to shit for me or it's been going well, but I keep the running tab of what's happening in the movie in my brain. So the 100%. Narrative side of it is fantastic.
Dude, I can I've played the Poltergeist scenario 6 times this week, and I can recall to you each of the 6 games and what happened in them. I have a bird's memory. It's crazy that I can remember this, right? Like it's nuts how deep the narrative of this game weaves itself into you while you're playing it.
Yep.
But anyway, back to the planning phase. So you purchase action cards. Once you've purchased your action cards, you reset your timer for the next turn to 6, and then you return any cards that you played that round to the tableau so that you can purchase them on the next turn. Mm-hmm. All right. And so after we get out of the planning phase, we get into the shit. Dear listeners, the killer phase.
Chops, anytime I get to that point where I move that hourglass back to the 6, I go, oh, fuck, I don't want to do this part.
See, I love it. I love the killer phase.
Oh, I do too, but it's just that dread of, that went too well. What's going to happen?
Yeah, boy. I've all my plans. What happens to them now? So the first thing we do is we resolve the killer action. And so we will talk about the components of this game, but for right now, what you need to know is there is a board that represents the killer. On the killer's board, you know the killer's health. You know the starting terror level for the scenario. You know how fast and how hard the killer hits based on the killer's current bloodlust, which is another thing you track in the game, is the killer's bloodlust. And then you also have 2 cards that start the game face down that represent the dark power of the killer and then the finale of the killer.
I hate flipping those cards.
I know. Especially the finale. It's rough. It's so rough.
I assume if I'm flipping that, I'm dead.
I can, I can feel the anxiety in your voice when you said that, Paul.
I've definitely... There's a few scenarios where you can win through the finale. I've won through the finale of the Big Bad Wolf. I've won through the finale of Dr. Fright. I've even won through the finale of the Poltergeist once.
Holy shit.
So I know. And but I'll tell you, boy, sometimes just the dark power of the Poltergeist is enough to just turbo fuck your game. But like, and that flips turbo fuck.
I mean, having played that one multiple times, that is very apt description.
I think that's my new turn of phrase from this point forward.
Perfect. All right. So the first thing you do is you resolve the killer action. And so the killer action is actually printed on either side of the finale, the card that has the finale on the back. Mm-hmm. But it starts with just the killer action. And generally, the killer action is just whatever space the killer's in, it stabs whatever's in the space, and that's all it does. But some of the killers do move, and there's iconography that dictates what the killer's doing, whether it's going toward the final girl, toward a victim, toward a final girl, or the victim, whatever's closer, or if it's moving, there's a boot icon and all of and the great thing about this game is all the iconography there's not a ton of it, and it's so consistent across the cards. So you know exactly what everything means as soon as you see the icons, which is very, it's like peak graphic design for me. The icons are very good and easy to read in this game.
Well, and to give you, again, going back to the narrative side of it, I mean, thinking about Hans, right? There's times where some of those cards, you flip them over and he's just staring you down, and
that's actually going to be my example of the next thing that happens.
Okay,
so after you resolve the killer action, you draw a terror card, and now we're going to tell you about terror cards. So
I got a step ahead. I'm sorry.
You're good. And so terror cards are, as much as like the action phase is sort of the wheel of this game, the heartbeat of this game is the terror cards. And the way that this works is there is a terror deck that comes with the whatever location you're playing and whatever killer you're playing. You shuffle all those terror cards together, which is usually 30, and then you draw 10 of them. Yep. And so those 10 are the only 10 you're going to see during the scenario, meaning at any given scenario, you're only even possibly going to see a third of the terror deck of the combined location and killer. Yep. And so you flip one of those cards over, and then, boy, does that card tell you what to do.
It tells you what you're doing to yourself.
Yeah, and usually they're terrible. So I'm looking at the terror deck for Dr. Fright right now. I actually which is the Freddy Krueger analog. And so I pulled his deck out. And there's a terror card that just says, ew, he's disgusting. And all it does is increase the horror level by 2.
Right. Yep.
So thereby, and in the Jason deck, it's called "He's Just Standing There" is the name of that card that does the same effect.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean it fits, right? Like that for those two characters, it's perfect.
And in both cases, it does increase the horror, right?
Yep.
But as an example, here's another. I don't want to spoil a lot of these cards, right? I just don't. But I also want to give like an example of what these cards can do. And so this is the Freddy Krueger one. So anybody who's seen a Nightmare on Elm Street movie is going to love this. And I'm only going to read one of these cards as a possible spoiler. So the name of the card is, oh my God, he's slicing off his own fingers. And so here's what it says. In iconography, it says, the final girl or victim, whatever's closest, move Dr. Fright twice. Oh. Then Dr. Fright takes 1 damage unless he only has 1 health remaining. If Dr. Fright took damage, increase the horror 3 times and panic every victim in the space.
Holy fuck.
And if you think about it, that's perfect, right? It's like him showing up in a dream, right? And like slicing his fingers off and the like terror of watching him cut his own hand apart.
Oh, and everybody like wakes up and runs
And freaks out.
Oh,
Exactly. God. Exactly. And so that's the kind of like when I said the heartbeat, right, is because like this sets the tone for the next turn. It delivers all the flavor. Like there's so much. And that's why I don't want to read more than one of these cards of the 30 that come in this box, because there's so much flavor in them.
And when you don't know them, like when you get a new one, it's like exciting. Right.
Right. And that's also why I don't want to read a lot of them, because I don't want to ruin them for Paul. But I thought that one was it was just too good of an example of how well this game marries its mechanics to its theme.
Yep. It's, I mean, it's true. I mean, you know, and they can just like build wacky combinations too. Because I had one, I think I was playing Camp Happy Trails, where it was like, oh, guess what? There's 2 new victims here. And then I flip the next one. Oh, look, here's 2 victims in 3 different spaces. I think I sent you a picture. Like my entire board was just yellow victims.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's bad.
Because
every time the killer kills a victim, his bloodlust goes up. And every time the blood goes up, they get faster, they hit harder. Bad things happen. Like these tracks are all very modular for the killers. Like some of the killers on their track, as their bloodlust goes up, it pops events out, or it increases the terror, or their dark power flips. There's like lots of different things that can happen.
So Paul, you said that they were yellow victims. What's the color denote?
That's just the color of the meeples.
Yeah, the meeples. The yellow meeples are victims.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
And then there's a couple other meeples if they're like a specific.
Yeah, so like you'll have events that are like, it'll be like spawn a victim and then change it with the blue meeple. The blue meeple is your boyfriend or your girlfriend, depending on how it flips over.
One of these days, Kevin, I'm going to play that one and I'm going to end up with both the girlfriend and boyfriend. And that's going to make me happy because I can just feel the awkwardness.
Of both of them flipping, because there is both of those in the Jason.
Yeah, I know, and that's what I'm saying. Like I want them both on the table at the same point, so I can imagine.
It's
like,
also
the final
incredible
girl being awkward about it.
Incredible how different those 2 cards are and how perfect those 2 cards are.
So good,
but I don't want to spoil any of it. So after the killer phase is the panic phase, and in the panic phase, if a victim was killed in the space where the killer is, you panic all the remaining victims. And basically that means you roll a dice and you consult the map, which is another thing that comes with each box that you buy as a map. And the map has numbers denoting which way victims panic out of the space. But also note there can be, depending on the scenario, there can be spaces where they just like run to their own deaths. It's so fucked.
I was just thinking about several occasions.
It's so fucked. And then after the panic phase, you go to the upkeep phase. And in the upkeep phase, the only thing you're checking to see is where your terror deck is. So if you're keeping score, you'll remember I said you take 10 of these terror cards and you generally reveal 1 per turn. Boy, there are some occasions where you flip more, but you're generally going to flip 1 of them. And if you don't have 1 to flip, then you flip the finale. And as Paul and I discussed previously, flipping the finale is generally very bad news for you, dear player. It's things go to hell in a handbasket when the finale flips, because usually what happens is it changes the killer's action. The killer's action changes from just like stabbing in place to something very proactive and very bad.
Yeah.
Jason starts running because he's tired of walking after you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Or he walks twice and swings twice or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or like every time he kills a victim, he heals. Like there's just so many things that like they play with this a lot. And that's not the Jason abilities specifically. I'm just like recalling different abilities. And also they can be like deeply thematic. Like just to say the alien, like one of the things the alien will do will disappear into the vents and then you can't even fucking kill it until it appears again. It's horrifying.
Jesus.
And I was just gonna say that there's also minor dark powers. So, like for instance,
Yeah. In the Terror deck.
yeah, in the Jason one, I pulled one where now he walks. I think it was like at least one extra, space.
Yeah, it's one additional boot. It's called Unholy Speed in that deck.
One.
Boy, have I played this game a lot. All right, so that's it. After the upkeep phase, if you have more in the Terror deck, you just move to the action phase again. And if there's not any, you flip to the finale, and then you go to the action phase. So you do always have that one turn to react to the finale before the finale actually goes off. But boy, is it never enough time. And that's it. So you're playing actions, you're rolling your dice to see how you succeed, you're purchasing new cards, and then you're finding out what terrible things the killer is going to inflict on the board. It's great.
Yep.
That's the loop. That's the core loop of the game. And so now that we've talked about the loop, we should talk about the boxes and how you actually play this game. And so, because it honestly is like one of the coolest aspects of the game. I think, Potter, as I describe this to you, you're going to be like, shut the fuck up. Well, I'm serious. If you don't know how it works, having it described to you is kind of mind blowing. So how the game works is you have to have the core box to start. And the core box isn't very exciting, but the core box has your dice that you need. So it's got your special dice. It's got all the meeples that you need. So all the hearts that you need for your health, all the victim meeples, the killer meeples, the final girl meeple, like all of those things. And most importantly, maybe the rules come in the core box. So all those things come in the core box. And then what you need is what's called a feature film box. And these things are amazing. And the reason that 11,000 people just ponied up $179 on Kickstarter for a whole series of these is because of how cool they are.
I will say the boxes are outstanding.
Yes. So I think they retail for $20 each, the feature film boxes. And so how they work, the boxes are, as you look at them, it just looks like a box. It's innocuous, but what you don't know until you've opened one is that there are actually two sides to the boxes. And one side is dedicated to the killer, and the other side is dedicated to the map. And as you turn the box over in your hand, it's very obvious which side is which, because it will say like starring Dr. Fright, the Dream Doctor, versus it will say Maple Lane as the location, right? And so you will know which one is which. So you'll know which side represents each. Now, these are magnetic, meaning you can, and they're also the size of like a VHS cassette like case, which is also very cool. But what happens is you open one and you magnetically open it and you're like, oh, that's cool. That's the killer board. And then you realize there are magnets that are holding it to the spine as well. And it fully disconnects from the box.
Yep.
And after it fully disconnects from the box, and this is, remember, on one side, it's the outside of the box, and on the other side, it is literally the killer board. So the board that you need to play the game is the box that you play the game with.
Yep.
I don't know how else to describe it. I think that's the best way I can describe it, without actually showing it. And so all of those stats that I was telling you about are now printed on the thing. And on the spine, it tells you the name of the killer. It shows you their health. It shows you their starting terror. And it shows you spaces that you can put their minor dark powers. And then on the opposite side, that's going to be your location side. And your location side is going to come with the map as the opposite side of the box, as well as the names of the locations that are searchable.
Let me expand on that for just a second, because I think this is important. Is that not only are the box covers, right? You can take them off and that's your map. But when you removed, say, Camp Happy Trails, the materials that you can see then are the materials for Camp Happy Trails. You won't see the materials for the killer until you flip it over and take that lid off, and there's your materials for the camp. And
Yep. And also there are vacuum molded plastic inserts that have covers that keep the components secure. So even after you take the case off, the pieces don't just fall out.
And the other important thing too here, Chops, and this gets into some other things, but the nice thing about that is if you're playing Maple Lane, but you want to use Hans, you're not having to go through, you're not going to have to dig through cards that you're not going to use.
You do not. All you do is take out the side for if you're going to combine two boxes, and you remember we mentioned this game is modular, so you can take Maple Lane out, and then you can take Hans out of the other box, and so you can have Jason on Maple Lane instead of in Camp Happy Trails.
Yep.
And the maps all are very different, to the point where they come with their own rules. Some of them have their own action cards that go into the tableau. As an example, Maple Lane has I'm not, this isn't spoiling anything, but it has spaces that are free for you to walk in, but there are also houses. And the way to get into the houses, you have to have the convince action, which is an action card that you buy for one time. And the successes allow you to enter the homes, because you actually have to convince the homeowners to let you into the houses.
It's kind of like banging on the door being like, let me use your phone.
Yeah, that's really thematic to horror movies. I like that a lot.
And so that's part of what Maple Lane's shtick is the convince action that lets you, and it's a restriction on the scenario because you're not free to just rescue victims. You actually have to convince them to let you into the house and then pull them out of the house so you can rescue them. Or search the houses, right? So that's the other part of it. What else was I going to say? The other components you get. So, okay, hold on. Let's talk about it. So we're talking about what you get in each side, right? So on the killer side, you're going to get anything that the killer has that's unique to the killer, which is typically their terror deck, and then their finale and dark power cards. And then in the case of some other killers, you get some cool stuff, but I don't want to talk about what any of the cool stuff is. In the Hans deck, you get nothing because Hans is basic. He just stab. That's what he does. But many of the other killers have completely separate things, like entirely separate mini games that you have to play with them. And I don't want to spoil any of them or what boxes they're in, because it's really fun to discover the things that this game has to offer you. And it's that discovery process is such a cool part of the game. Now in the other side of this, so on the location side, you also get some terror cards, but it's typically it's a third of the terror cards. So if you look at how the terror decks work, the terror decks are always 1/3 the location and 2/3 the killer. And if you think about it, that makes sense, because that makes it so the odds when you rip those 10 cards off is that more of them are going to be related to the killer than the location. Which is good. Mathematically, that's actually really great, and I think thematically appropriate. Also, in the location side, you are going to get a deck of event cards. There are lots of things that trigger events in the game, but key to the setup of the game is that the very first thing you do before your first action phase is flip an event, and that event kind of sets the tone for the scenario. And there's lots of other ways that second, third, and fourth events can pop into play. You also get a deck of setup cards. And so the setup cards dictate to you where the killer starts, where the final girl starts, and then where and how many victims are on the map. So that's another part. So if you're keeping track, that's another point of variation. So there's an event card that you flip, and usually there's 20 event cards. I don't actually know. I'm not actually sure. I think it's maybe a variable number, but it's usually more than 10 events. So, and you're always going to see one, but many times only one, and other times more than one. So you get a lot of variation through the events. There's usually 5 setup cards. So there's 5 different ways that the game can start. And then there's also a deck of item cards. And so the item cards is another deck. And then there are going to be locations on the deck where items are present. And what you do is you shuffle the items and then you deal out 3 items to each location and put the rest back in the box. So you don't even see all the items in any given scenario. So the items are a point of variance. The setup is a point of variance. The terror cards are a point of variance. And then the events, and then also how you pair your killer with your location are all variants. So when we were talking about this game being infinitely replayable, this is what we meant.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and even with that, that's even before we get into like just taking 2 different feature films and mixing and matching those.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even know that you could do that for like the rules allowed for that. So like that's really cool because, you know, if you want to play the campy horror movie of Jason versus Freddy kind of thing, you can, you know, do something similar to that, it sounds like.
Or like what I'm actually planning on doing. So I've been trying to play the game once a day in October. I haven't quite kept up with it. Like I think on average I'm about there, but like I'm not actually playing every day. Like sometimes I'm playing 4 or 5. Some days I'm playing 1. Other days I'm playing nut 0. But what I'm going to do, I think, as we get closer to Halloween, is I'm going to combine the USS Conrad, which is the Nostromo from Alien, with Hans, so I can play Jason X.
Yeah, nice.
God, it's such a bad movie.
And,
yeah, it's terrible.
The other thing too I like about it, Chops, is that if you kind of combine the name of the killer and the name of the location, you get your movie. You know, like you get your movie title, right? Like Hans, killer of Camp Crystal Lake, or Hans but then like some of them are like badass, and then some of them are just end up being like the shitty 7th sequel in the film.
Frightmare
on Maple Lane is the name of when you play Dr. Fright on Maple Lane.
And what is it'd be like the super secret to the sequel to the organism would be like the organism at Camp Happy Trail, you know, like
yeah, it made it from Antarctica, and now the kids are fucked.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And it's just like so bad, right? Like it's like they were so out of ideas that now this weird organism is at camp.
I mean, it fits for how they make those movies.
I mean, well, yeah, that's just it, right? Like you get the great ones, right? Like The Thing as it is, and then you just get dumb ones, right? But then there's other ones that would definitely work too, like the Poltergeist at Camp Happy Trails. Like I feel like that would be an incredible one.
Yeah, that would work.
So good. So good. I actually want to do the Poltergeist in the Outsiders. What's the name of the actual, the like Let Me In one?
The Strangers, that one?
The Strangers, that one. Yeah.
Oh.
I want to do it in that house, the Poltergeist in that house, because house has such a different layout than Creech Manor.
Painful.
But it's cool that you can do that, right? You can like mix and match them so well. And it also like the Kickstarter stuff. So, and it's not the cool thing about this is the Kickstarter exclusives are dice that randomize these scenarios. They're basically like just a very cool knickknack. And so everything that else was available in the Kickstarters you can buy from Van Ryder, the publisher. And the reason I'm mentioning this is one of the really cool things that they offer is scenario booklets that tell you like it's basically a book that's full of scenarios that are sort of like custom built. So it's like play this final girl with this killer at this location and always start with this event. Right. And so it's like a bespoke scenario. And it's like a book full of them. Right. And they're so cool. And so if you buy what are called the ultimate boxes, and the ultimate box will have like the core rules, the 5 the 5 feature films, the vignette, which is like a kind of like a feature film, the playmat for the season, and then boxes of extras. And in the box of extras is these booklets that sort of give you these bespoke scenarios for combining the killers and the maps across the different seasons of the game. So like the first series and second series as an example.
Yep.
I just think that's super cool.
No, that's really cool. I like that. Because, I mean, it makes it so, like, you don't feel like you're missing out if you don't pledge high
if you don't
enough.
Kickstart it.
Right, yeah. Or if you don't Kickstart it, yeah.
And then, you can always get it. But also, it's like, as a person who has it, it's a huge value add, right? Because if you're like, I've played all these scenarios, I can't really decide on what I want to do, you can just, like, flip open the book and be like, cool, this one sounds rad, and just play it.
Right.
What we keep talking about it being modular, Chops, but one of the things that we haven't mentioned is how different the final girls are, right?
Oh,
because
boy.
that's another variation there.
Holy Jesus. I cannot believe we didn't mention that. So an important part of this...
And again, you can use any of the final girl cards with any of the scenarios.
Any of the scenarios. Yeah, and so... in those ultimate boxes, you also get final girls that don't come in the core boxes, and there are some rad ones. But each one of the feature film boxes comes with 2 final girls, and typically they're very deep references to the films that they're in, or like pop culture generally. And usually one of them is definitely tied to the feature film, and the other one is either also tied to the feature film or tied to a content creator or something like that, or something in pop culture. But the final girls themselves, yeah, boy, we didn't even talk about this, because one of the things you can do in this game is rescue victims.
Mm-hmm.
And so victims will follow you as you move through the map. If you move over a space with victims, when you move again, 2 victims will follow you. Generally,
right.
There's things that can happen that make it so they don't, but generally 2 victims will follow you, and then if you lead them to a green space, that means you rescue those victims. And when you rescue the victims, you take those victims and you place them on your final girl card, and as you place them on your final girl card, there are spaces that look like meeple outlines. And when you put the meeple, the victim meeple on your final girl, it gives you a bonus, and those bonuses are significant. It can be like purchase any 2-time card, like 2 resource spendy card, or decrease the horror by 1, or instantly move a space. Like, they're huge bonuses.
Yep.
And if you flip the final girl card by rescuing all of the victims, and this is also variable.
Well, not all of the victims, but all of the ones that fill up the card.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. This is also variable, right? Like, there is a final girl that only has 1 victim on the front. But there are also, generally it's like 3 to 6. And so if you rescue the 3 to 6 victims, then you flip over the final girl's card, and she gets a signature ability that she can use for the rest of the scenario. So you as the player have this like sort of ultimate ability available at your scenario. And like one that we can talk about, since we've been talking about Camp Happy Trails, is Reiko. Mm-hmm. And Reiko's ability is that if she's within 2 spaces of Hans, or the killer, she can just teleport into the killer's space, which is massive, because you don't actually have to spend time or movement to get to the killer's space to hit it and then peace out.
Yep, because you still have your cards. You can still get out of there.
Yep. And that's just an example of one of the final girls. So yeah, the final girls, another point of variability in the game.
And you know what I always forget when it comes to the final girls, Chops? I always forget that when you flip to the other side and you rescue somebody, there's usually something that you get for rescuing them.
Yes.
I always forget that. I'm always handicapping myself on that.
Yeah, you should always remember that last victim does give you something.
Yep.
So Paul, I think we're right at that level where we're gonna approach your commute. So I want to talk about what your favorite moment from the game is so far.
So can I do 2?
You can do 2.
One of them is more the narrative, like the narrative that I was able to view, and the other one is just narrative with the ridiculous gameplay. So the first one, it was a Camp Happy Trails one, and I was searching for I was just searching, and I happened to pull up the boat keys. So now there's suddenly a boat where people can, get out, and if you got the meeples to the boat, you got to like rescue 3 people.
Yeah, we like the boat keys.
All I could envision was like the neighbor coming over, finding out that all this crazy shit's happening. He's like, come on guys, let's go. Like trying to do the right thing and rescue the kids. Which, if you've watched horror movies, goes one of 2 ways. Either the guy's successful and he gets them out, right? And then they're the ones that go call the police. Or like they're about to get on the boat and the killer catches up with them and wipes them all out. Guess which one happened to me?
The second one.
The second one.
You got Jason's mom came and grabbed you out of the boat, huh?
Oh my God. They didn't even make it to the boat. As far as I'm concerned, they were still in that room, like looking for the keys. Like they dropped it in a panic. And that's just kind of the narrative, the way this game comes across is that if you, get away from the Matrix side of it and constantly assessing your statistics and whatnot, you really get a great narrative story. My other favorite thing is Poltergeist and Creech Manor, right? Because the Creech Manor is an amazing map, right? It's so it's a house, and you got different floors, and certain rooms will only go upstairs from certain spots. There's some spots that are like holes in the floor, so you can drop down, but you can't go back up.
Can't go up.
There's on the one side of the house, there's 2 open windows that you can jump out of. The other side, there's a ladder that you can climb up.
Yeah, and you can only rescue from the floor. Like so, you either have to take somebody all the way downstairs or jump out the window.
Right. Those are the only escapes.
People.
So and this was best like gameplay wise / narrative. And again, spoilers. So if you don't want to know anything about any of the games,
I am also going to talk about Creech Manor. So spoilers.
Perfect. Yeah. So Creech Manor spoilers. So one of the things with Creech Manor is that the game is very different than Camp Happy Trails, right? Because generally
than any other, it's literally different than all 9 other boxes.
And the reason why is that you can't kill a ghost,
right?
The only way you can win this game is to find they're here girl. You have to find where she's hiding and get her out of the house.
Yep. Yeah, you've got to rescue Carolyn and get out of the house.
Yes.
And we talked about and this isn't spoiling the scenario to mention this, right? Because like when you open the box, you read the rules, and the rules state that when you're forming the item decks, you have to shuffle Carolyn randomly into the item decks, and you don't know which room she's in or where in the room she is.
Yep. So, which makes it very interesting because it's a fine. What I learned about this one, Chops, is that it's a fine balance between searching everything and getting the fuck out of there, like searching and going before the ghost catches up to you, because that ghost is fucking fast.
He's super fast. I have once with the mics are cold. I have a story for you. It's way too spoilery for me to talk about it with a hot mic. But my actual story isn't quite as spoilery. But you need to tell us what your one is.
Right. So it was Creech Manor. I get up into the attic, right? And I search everything. I go through the whole deck, right? And I get a card. It's the list. And you roll a die.
List, boy.
If you get 1 or 2, you get it. Well, I don't remember exactly which ones are which. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, I'm golden because I know what's in this room. I'm going to find out what's in one of those rooms. And if she's not there, it's the other one.
You know where she is. Yep.
You know what I rolled, Chops? The room I was fucking in.
Bad luck, matey.
I was are you kidding me?
That's Final Girl, baby.
So then I'm like, all right, well, she's not in the attic. I'm going to the closet. I go to the closet. Second card down, Carolyn.
Carolyn.
Fuck yes. I need to get 1 floor down and just jump out the window. right? Like that's probably my quickest way out. And then through the tarot card, that's where the ghost ended up. I'm just like, shit, now I can't go that way. Like I gotta try and run through the house now.
Oh, because victims won't enter killer spaces with
Right.
you. That's like an important rule.
Yes.
Yep.
And so then the killer gets up to me, and I had a guard card, luckily, and the killer swung at me. I was able to guard it. Then I pulled the tarot card, Kevin. And do you know what the tarot card was?
Well, you're gonna tell me.
Where'd she go?
So she hides. Carolyn hides again.
Yes. So she hides again. So she got shuffled back in. Which then at that point, I'm like, well, fuck it. I'm going to search the closet again. Wouldn't you believe it? I found her right away in that closet.
First card. You got it.
I was like, all right, that's going my way. So then I had a basic walk and a sprint. And oh my God, the event card I had going for this was like, it was extreme winds in the house. So all of your movements
only
were
move
reduced by
-1.
to 1.
Yep.
Right. So
But a lot of this is really familiar to my story.
right. So
Continue,
then, like
yep.
on my walk, I rolled 2 successes so I could go 2 spots. But no, I can only go 1. So now I'm 2 spaces away from being able to get out that window. Right. Like I'm outside of the room with the window. Right. And then I would need to jump down, which means I have my sprint card. And at that point, all right, everything on the sprint card is worthless because they're all going to drop to 1 unless I get 2 successes. And I rolled a success and a card, right? Like a 3 or a 4 where you had to change the cards. And I'm looking at my hand. I'm almost out of cards. So I played, Close Call. And
Yep, to reroll.
rolled that die, got the star, grabbed Carolyn, ran into that room, and jumped out the fucking window.
Hell yeah. Got out.
Unbelievable. I was just like, this was so lucky.
That's peak Final Girl. Because like like when it goes, because it was good. I mean, it was going bad for you. Like
yeah.
That's bad.
Oh, when I pulled that list, like I pulled that list card, and I'm like, this is the best thing ever. Like, oh no, I'm a genius. Oh no.
Oh no. Yep, for sure. Yep.
Oh my gosh, yeah, so good, so much fun, and just so different from like some of the other ways that I've played that game. Because my first time I played that game, I think it was 3 turns. I swear to God, it was 3, maybe 4 turns, and I was dead. Just everything went sideways.
Yeah. I will tell you how mine went.
Okay.
All right. So mine is also Creech Manor. And you will note that Creech Manor has a lot of tarot cards that say if you have Carolyn, discard this card and draw the next one.
Yeah.
This is important to this story.
Oh no.
Okay. So I start in the attic. All right. And I dirtle for a turn and manage horror because the attic is also a searchable location. And I'm like, fucking Yahtzee. There aren't a lot of maps where you can start in a searchable location. I love this shit.
I feel an
so
no coming on.
I'm dirtling.
And it was at that point he knew he fucked up.
Well, I'm dirtling. I grab both searches because I'm like, fuck it. I'm just going to grab them both and have them because I know I'm going to need a lot of search. I'm going to need to search a lot. Fucking roll my search, 2 stars, Carolyn, second card down. Bada bing, bada boom. Fucking second turn, Carolyn in hand.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy. Just got to get to one of the windows. No fucking problem. Flip it over. Bam. Wind in the house. God damn it. All my moves are down by 1. Fuck. Right? And so I'm like, all right, it's not far. It's not far. I can make it.
You got this.
And I'll note that the killer the way that when you start in the attic, boy, the killer started real close and it was just like a murder row. It was like move, kill. Yep, so right. The terror is going up very fast, or the bloodlust is going up very fast, like scary fast, right? And so like I'm taking my turns, right? And the first couple turns, like I swear to one of the turns, I burned 4 cards into where'd she go?
Oh,
Like-
no.
So a full half of my terror deck just burned right out because I was holding her. I was like, if you have her, discard. If you have her, discard. I was like, fuck.
Oh, man.
And then
'cause
where'd she
now
go?
you're getting
So
closer
she
to the finale.
so she disappears. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it, it's fine. No big deal. We got this. We're gonna do it.
That's not fine.
I go to the next room. First item I find, it's the list.
Nice.
Yes.
Game on.
I roll on it. It's the third room, the one I don't know about, and she's in there. So now I know.
Nice.
I know where she is. I can avoid the killer and let the killer do what the killer needs to do, and I can just buy sprint cards and sprint my happy ass down there. I get to her. I fucking search the room, and I find her. You know, right? So I get in there. I use the search card. I get Carolyn. Fucking next terror card is every move for the next phase is fucking panicked.
Oh, no.
So all my moves are reduced by 1, and I don't get to move where I want. I have to roll a fucking dice
Oh, God.
to tell me where I'm going to move. And wouldn't you know it, that's the last terror card.
Oh, no. Now you're getting the finale.
So I flip the finale, and it's the one where she just like instantly warps into your room, and it's 3 knives.
Oh, God.
And we're talking about like 5 turns, right? Because like I went through half the deck in one turn.
Jeez.
So it went from like I found her on turn 2, I found Carolyn to turn 2 to dying in the fucking broom closet on turn 5 with Carolyn in hand.
Oh, brutal.
That sucks, man.
But like how funny is that story, right? Like it's just so perfect.
Jeez, yep. And I mean that's how the game goes. And look at that. We had the randomness of it, right? We both had some of the same cards come up, but look how different our games were.
Yeah. Oh my god, dude, the terror card where every move in the next phase is panicked. The first time I read it, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like this has gotta be the worst. I've seen some bad terror cards. This has gotta be the worst.
Yeah, and again, narratively, it's like you have this strong wind that's, accompanied by a fog
the way I read that card is it's that scene from Poltergeist where like every room in the house is like emanating terrible shit. Like they open a door and it's just like fucking shit flying around. Like,
right.
So you can't go anywhere. Like everywhere you go is panic, right? And you're like, I can't go anywhere.
Yeah,
and then she showed up in my space the next turn and murdered me. So bad. So bad.
But so much.
But yeah,
fun.
so that's Final Girl. And Paul, the last thing you have on this thing is like as a non-board gamer, why you love this game, and we should get through that.
And I feel like this is important because I'm really not a board game person, right? Like there's just too much going into it, right? And I know miniatures games have a lot going into it, but you play the same thing every time. You know what you need, and sometimes it's just cards and a couple tokens, right? Whereas board games, like you unload a board game and it's like, oh, here's this. I got to make a pile of this. I got to make a pile of this. I got to make a pile of this. And I've been looking for something to play by myself, right? Like just to have something like that. And I was considering going back into the Eldritch LCG from FFG, right? And again, I dreaded the fact that it was always going to be getting out all this stuff and I probably wasn't going to use most of it. So one of the most important things to me that attracted me to this game is that I'm only getting out what I need. I'm taking out the killer. I'm taking the location. The only stuff I have is the stuff related to those and the stuff from the core box, which you're going to need anyway. So it's so simple to set up. They give you everything that they need. And I mean, in all honesty, that is the biggest selling point for me, right? Like I wanted something that I could play, but I didn't want something that was going to like waste my time. And the game does not waste your time.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah, and you can jump in. Games very easy to learn. If it is something that you want to play and you're not sure where to jump in, I highly recommend jumping in with the Camp Happy Trails film, because there's no special rules for the killer, there's no special rules for the location, so you can really spend that time focusing on the rules of the game.
And your LGS should have the game. I mean, my town is only a sample size of 1, but almost every LGS in my town carries the game. The other thing to note is
I have not seen it in a store.
Yeah, I was like, I think I've seen it in almost all of ours here.
Yep.
Yeah, so the other thing to note is that the exact pair that Paul just mentioned, the Core Box and Camp Happy Trails, come as a package that you can purchase at Barnes & Noble. So if you don't have an LGS or your LGS doesn't carry it, your local Barnes & Noble either has the 2-pack or they can order it.
Yep. And so, and this is the other thing that I wanted to talk about here real quick, Kevin, is price point.
Yeah.
So many board games are like, hey,
so
you want to play
days.
us $80-$90, right? Like $70.
Yep.
Whereas, and you're all in, right? Like you have to go all in. Whereas the nice thing here is that you can buy as much as you want, and you can buy it as slowly as you want, right? Your initial buy-in is $40, which for a board game is really good, right? Because if you look at like games like Exit, you know, they're pushing $20 a pop, and they're designed to be played once, right?
Yep, one time.
So to be able to get that, and then, you know, you play that, and there's so many variations, right? Like I said, I played 9 times in the first 2 days that I owned the core set and Camp Happy Trails, and got I'm ready to jump back into Camp Happy Trails at any time, right? Like with Hans, I had that much fun with it.
Game's great. Yeah.
And then
great.
You want some more, and you spend another $20, which is, again, not an unreasonable jump in. Yes, if you want all of it, it's going to cost you, you know, eventually a good amount of money, but you are not obligated to drop it at once.
Right, you can slowly also go move your way into it at your leisure.
Exactly.
And to go on that leisure too, like each time you buy one, your options for your games
expand.
I mean, it's exponential, right? Because every time you add a box, it adds a huge amount of variation, right? Like because you only have a few variations if you have 2 feature films. Once you have 3 feature films, you've got a lot more variations. 4. And then it starts to expand and expand and expand. And I think what they said is after you've got 15, right, it's like 200 something different combinations that you can create for combining a killer and a location. And that's not even talking about the variability in the item decks, terror decks, setup decks, etc. Right? So replayability and being able to purchase and play at your own pace.
It's huge. So I mean, every one you buy, you're getting a higher value out of it because you have more, you know, ways to make it different. And I mean, even just in like the variation on tarot cards has just amazed me from day one, because you're right. You have about 30 of them and you're only using 10 each game. So you use those 10, reshuffle it, you know, like you shuffle it 7 times,
10.
right?
Yep.
And it's entirely randomized again. You're going to get an entirely different game experience.
Entirely different. Yep.
You know, and that's not even getting into setups. And the thing that I absolutely love about it too, again, I view this as a narrative game, is the different setups and how they make sense for what they're called, right? Like
yes, they're all named something, and the names are appropriate thematically to the thing, for sure.
And again, I'm trying to stick to Camp Happy Trails because I feel like that's what people should play first. But there's one called Bonfire, right? Yep. Which is great because and you look at where the victims are placed, and you can clearly see, hey, there's a bonfire going on, but like these are the counselors, like you have your bonfire spot, but then the 2 spots next to it, there's like, you know, two victims there, but clearly those are the counselors making sure that people don't leave. But then you have
there will be like 2 victims at Makeout Point that aren't with all the
Yes.
other kids.
And that's that's the one that I love. There's Makeout Point
Yeah.
and there's 2 victims there. Cracks me up every fucking time I see that.
Yep.
So yeah, so I mean, very thematic. It scratches an itch. I kind of wanted to scratch, which was a single player board game, but I didn't think that there would be a single player board game that would scratch the itch so well and maintain my attention.
So
Man, it makes me so happy to know you like it this much. But Chris, go ahead, sorry.
yeah, no, I was gonna say, like, the day you like texted us and said that you picked it up, I was shocked because I know how much you don't like board games. Mm-hmm. and you were like, "Oh, I just picked up Final Girl." I was like, "That's a board game, right?"
And
Paul's picking that up, and then you
had
fell in love with it.
I hadn't even played, like, it's not even like I played a demo of it, right? But what got me 100% was going to Bab's birthday party and seeing the way the components functioned.
Yeah. That's why I tried to explain it, right? Like, because like once you have an idea how the component, and by the components, we mean like how the box actually becomes the game.
Yep.
It's so clever and so cool.
Yep. And just, and seeing how that all worked together and how it would build on them. You know, I'm not the biggest horror fan. Like I enjoy them, but you know, Aubrey's far more into that than I am. Like sometimes if she's watching a movie and I have the game for it, I'll pull it out. Like she loves The Strangers, so when she watches The Strangers, I'm always pulling that scenario out, right?
Yeah.
And you know, so even as it's not like not, oh my god, I gotta have a horror one, like you know, a sci-fi thing or you know, that would probably be more straight up my alley. But the way everything is set up, and I have just enough interest in like the way everything's set up was like sealed the deal, right? And I know just enough about the scenarios in the horror film genre that I can appreciate it for the depth of it, right? Like I would never know every reference that you would know, Kevin, but I know enough to make it interesting and to understand it and to appreciate it.
I will say for me, it depends on the scenario too. Like that scenario, the like Outsiders one, I don't know that movie very well. So like it's just like cool to play it. But yeah, man, boy, if you like, it's kind of a no brainer to buy one and buy the scenario for the killer that matches the movie that you like, because they are so good.
Yeah.
With the ones that match them.
Yep. You will. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's almost like, I don't know. It's almost like the game has the Easter eggs for you, right? Like
it does. It definitely
if you know
does.
this movie, you'll know this.
Boy, The Thing has it something crazy. But so does the Jason one. So does the Freddy one. So does the Poltergeist one.
Yeah.
Like they're all really good. The Puppet Master one is fantastic.
Yeah. And
The Alien one's my favorite one. I mean, Alien's kind of like, it's not just my favorite horror movie. It's kind of basically my favorite movie, period. And it is, there's been like, I'm actually kind of annoyed that you haven't bought it yet, Paul, because I can't talk to you about my favorite parts of that scenario.
I'll go find it.
Yeah, oh my God. I mean, just when you read the rules, I swear to God, like this is one of the things that happens in this game, and Paul can confirm. You will crack a box open and start reading the scenario rules and like literally chuckle to yourself at how clever they marry the theme of the movie into the mechanics for the scenario.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the best things.
That.
Oh yeah. I mean the like opening up and reading The Thing, right? Like the
oh my God, that scenario.
Like as soon as you read that, you know, like you're like,
when you read when you read the test procedure, you're like, oh fuck no,
Yep. And you're like, geez, it's like not only are you searching rooms, but you're also checking in on the people that you're with, because you can't trust them.
Yeah, so Chris, the terror starts remarkably low in The Thing, very low. but also no one, oh no, wait, it's high. It starts at 5, doesn't it? I've got the scenario wrong. But the thing is, there's no killer present. Like, there's literally no killer on the board when you start, but there are 3 victims that you flip their meeples out as the people that everyone in the camp suspects. And you have to collect blood tests and test them to find out if they're the...
Because that's the premise of the thing, right? Is that
that's
like
the
somebody
premise.
turns into it.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen the movie, but yeah.
But then on top of that, Chris, it's random, right? So you might test somebody and not get one. You might test the second person and not get any, and third person you might get a killer. Or you could have the game go the other way and end up with all 3 of them as killers.
Yeah, because the game is maximum fuck you, because there's 3 test kits. There's more than three test kits, but when you test a victim, there's 3 cards, and it's two clears, and you found the organism. And so if you flip a clear, then that one doesn't get reshuffled back in. So there has to be one organism, right? There has to be one, because if you get them both clear to start, the last one will surely be it. But the issue is, and what always happens to me is, all 3 of the motherfuckers are the ones that flip with the goddamn card. Yep. I've had to. I went one time 3 games in a row. I could not find this is the clear test. It was the fucking organism every time. I got it 9 times in a row. But man, that scenario is cool. I don't know how to beat it. Maybe better luck.
I haven't tried it yet. I'm working my way through season 1 first during this holiday.
Hard. It is hard. And it's hard because like that, right? They're like having to test them. They're not necessarily tough, but like you have to expend so much resources testing them. Yep. And then meanwhile, people are going outside and freezing to death. And oh God, it's a lot. The scenario is a lot.
And you can only save victims by getting them on the helicopter.
The helicopter.
Which after you get them on the helicopter, they have to fly those victims and then fly back before you can get more people on it.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
And it's 5 turns?
With 10. Generally 10 turns.
Okay. Yeah, because once you hit... imagine, like think of it as like after you flip that last card and your boss goes into finale mode, it's like a WoW boss in Raging.
Yeah, it's an accelerant.
Gotcha.
But also, there is a card you can purchase where you're yelling over the comms to the helicopter pilot to fly faster, right. And it will actually get back faster. But it's rough, man. That scenario is very. I think my experience with the scenario is very much tainted by the fact that it's been extremely hard for me because I've gotten almost because you reveal it as the organism, but then also there are 3 different organisms that escalate in difficulty, and every time I flip the scariest one first. Every time. So it's just like I'm done. Yeah. God, it's so rough. And like one time I was like, fuck it, I can see the flamethrower. I'm just gonna go flamethrower this motherfucker, and it still just went to hell in a handbasket. But that scenario is really cool. Anyway, we should go final thoughts because we're way over now. Paul, final thoughts.
Love it. Go buy it. Spend the $40. Get the core set. Get the Camp Happy Trails. Give it a try. It's great for those nights when you're like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. The spouse is watching something I don't really want to watch. I don't feel like painting. I don't feel like building it. Play a fucking game of Final Girl and 20 to 60 minutes. And you'll have a good time. And if it goes to shit, you'll laugh at it and text your friends and say, holy crap, this went to hell. I'm going to re-rack because not only is it easy to set up, it's also extremely easy to re-rack.
Yep. All right. And so I'll echo everything you said. And I will change it to say, if you are interested at all in this game, but horror movies aren't your jam necessarily, go buy the core box and the Little Red Riding Hood Big Bad Wolf scenario, because that one is the least horror movie feeling of them, but it still gives you the experience as we're describing it in such a cool way. And that scenario has some of the coolest cards in it. They are so rad. And the way that the Big Bad Wolf operates is very different than most killers, and it's so cool. And again, that one doesn't rely on you loving horror movies or even appreciating horror movies. You just get to play as a Little Red Riding Hood in a power fantasy against the big bad wolf.
Does he scream "Run away, little girl" at me?
Runaway Little Girl is a terror card.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
So I guess my final thoughts, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you guys have it. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. For me, even after you guys explained it, it sounds like a lot of fun. But I'd just rather go play video games. So I'm glad it's there for you guys. I'm glad it's for people who like it. It sounds like a ton of fun, but I'm just going to go play Fallout and kill zombies.
I'm telling you, it's a different kind of thing, man, and it's super fun. Like, think of it this way: do you like games like Final Fantasy Tactics?
Oh, of course, yeah.
So Final Fantasy Tactics is basically a board game.
It is.
So if you think about it, it's just like taking I think Final Girl would actually make a pretty cool digital implementation, but I do love the tactile feeling of the dice and stuff. So I hear you. I do. And that was actually kind of my reservation about getting into solo gaming, was like, why wouldn't I just play a video game? But boy, the tactile nature of this game makes a big difference.
Oh, those dice.
And it's
Those giant dice.
It's I would say just play. Yeah, they're so clacky. Oh, I love them.
See, I'm not a big one into like the tactile feel of the dice and things like that. Like that doesn't get me into something, I think.
That's fair. Man, I just like love moving things around and playing with little pieces. Anyway, yeah, if that's not a big deal, then it's probably not for you. But boy, highly recommended.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, I'm happy it's there for people that enjoy it. You know, it's like other games that I don't like. I'm like, just because it's not my cup of tea, like I'm glad it's there for people. Like, please have fun with it.
Hell yeah. All right, one of you guys read us out. My voice is going.
I think Potter should do it since he doesn't like the game. That's his punishment.
That's my punishment. I never said I didn't like the game. You know what? I'm going to throw this model at you the next time I see you. Cool. Thank you to Static in the City for the intro and outro music. Thank you to all our patrons. You guys are awesome. Come join our Discord. It's active like crazy. Good group of people on there. Lots of discussions with lots of different games. And just find us on the socials.